All right, we're live.
All right. We are live. Yeah, we are live. So
So
again,
first of all, good to see you again, man.
yeah, absolutely. Merry Christmas, right? It's exciting. I love the build up to the new year. It's always a great time to reflect. I think that's the one thing. It's the hardest thing for me, Dean, to get used to is the slowdown of the holidays because it does, right? It slows down from a business sense. It kind of ramps up from a family sense. But then the cool thing about that is it does give you time to reflect and say, okay, what do I want to let go of in the new year? What do I want to keep doing? All those things. I think it's a great time of year to really tap into gratitude and to be excited. New year, and it's always New Year's always exciting. It just really is.
Yeah. No, I love this time of year because I mean we experience kind of the same thing. There's not a whole lot of business, but a lot of family and reflection. So kind of it's like one of those times a year that we could just like anchor into what's really important.
Yeah, you
You
bet.
know?
You bet.
So yeah, let's actually spend a couple minutes like just kind of like you and I being, practicing what we preach. Like let's, get vulnerable and talk about what's most important for 2019.
Well, I have put a theme really on this time of year and getting it solved. And I'd like to think it'd be solved by the beginning of the year. I'm not sure if it will. I think there's things that'll still pop up, but I constantly keep asking myself, what are we square pegging? That is, a big thing for me. What do we keep trying to fit into a round hole that, just doesn't, you can spend a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money on things that just you're not supposed to or should be doing. So that's got me really, really excited because it has led to 2019 being what I call, really lean and mean. And what I mean by that is, and again, it's always these distinctions between the two of us from age and experience. Um, Lean and mean is I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm not certainly not comparing. I know who I am. I know what our business is. I know what it is I want to see happen, and running that play. I think, like last year, I went through such an extreme moment of personal development that I was going to all kinds of seminars and doing all these things to say, okay, who am I? What am I doing? How do I level up, et cetera. And I think this year, it's okay, what are we dropping off that we shouldn't be doing, and what are we, and just executing. And that probably, and I'll be vulnerable, is a weakness for me because I'm always looking to build, right? I'm the visionary, the man, what will it look like when we do this, and maybe we should, and I can get very easily distracted instead of paying attention to, and just execute, run the play, keep it simple, and don't deviate from what needs to be done.
Yeah, that's like the epitome of clarity right there.
And it's staying clear, right? It's staying, it's very easy to say, okay, this is what we're going to do. But by day 30, day 60, day 90, are we still running that play? And then obviously
Yeah.
there's going to be tweaks, right? But staying committed to what you said at the beginning of the year that you were going to go do.
Yeah. By the way, did you get a chance to look at that spreadsheet I sent over to you?
I did. And I have not sat down and put my numbers in there. I'm actually waiting for this planner to come to me, which is taking a little while because I want to go through the planner and identify. I use Darren Daly's Living Your Best Year Ever. I think we spoke about that.
Yeah.
And so I'm waiting for the new one to come because there's this exercise that allows you to really, a planner does a great job of evaluating the year that just ended. And so before I attack your spreadsheet, I want to really get clear through that exercise of what are we abandoning, what are we keeping. And I have an idea, obviously, but I just want to have absolute clarity so that when I plug those numbers in, they are about execution.
Yeah, no, that's super cool.
Yeah.
We use kind of a process at the end of each each month as a team, we get together and we do what's called start, stop, continue.
Mm.
So we all kind of go through something, something that we need to start doing, something we need to stop doing, and something that we need to continue doing. And doing that, actually, hold on one second, man. All right, I just paused the recording real quick. Yeah, my bad. So yeah, the start, stop, continue method is something that helps us get really clear on, looking at our North Star. Looking at our North Star, which is like, that one direction that we're heading into, and kind of like what we want to manifest for the entire year. And then each month that goes by, looking at the activities and just the way that we showed up that last month, and based on that, what should we start doing, what should we stop doing, and what should we continue doing. So that's been a really helpful exercise for us. And yeah, I love what you said about, like, getting clear is one thing, but staying clear is another. And so having like that monthly check-in.
I love that. I'm actually looking at that saying, okay, how do I incorporate that into our system? I meet with our A-team players every week, but on a monthly basis, it would, you do that with just your A-team? You do it with all your agents?
Yeah, I mean, we have a small team, so I'm not managing 50 people like you are. So we've only got a handful of people on our team. So we use the spreadsheet that I sent over to you, the 411, which is the 4 weeks, 1 month, 1 year. So at the top of it, it's going to be the 1 year goals, and that never changes throughout the year. Or sometimes it does if we like add a priority or whatever. But for the most part, it doesn't change. And then each month there's the monthly goals that are going to support the yearly goals. And then each week we have a meeting about, we kind of do the start, stop, continue thing just by, like the actual process of it every week, but we don't call it this. We don't have it that structured every week. It's just every month that we actually do the start, stop, continue.
Okay.
Because oftentimes it's just, hey, my goal is to have 20 closings this month. And this week I did 3 when my goal was 5 for the week. So where am I going to make up those other 2?
Right.
Or how am I going to make up those other 2? And that gets, pushed into either the next week, or if there's a monthly goal that I didn't hit, okay, I need to make it up in the next month. So which strategies am I going to use in order to get closer to that monthly goal, or beef up that, the activity, so that the next month I can make up for the lost ground in this month. So yeah, and we can have a separate conversation about that spreadsheet and how I use that. I think it'd be super valuable, because you guys work on an appointment style basis, right?
Sure. Everything comes down to how many appointments are you setting?
Yep. So same thing here. So it's really, really good for that. And our business is pretty similar on that front. So I can show you kind of how we use the 411 to stay accountable to ourselves, but also stay accountable to our entire team. And my goals look a little bit different than our agents, just because my role is a little bit different. But for the most part, we're holding each other accountable to stay really consistent for our individual goals.
Yeah.
And yeah, so the 411 definitely helps out with that. So yeah, we'll have another conversation around that. And I can, kind of show you how I structure it, and then, you'll know how to plug all your stuff in there.
Sure. So we chose today or this week, right, to talk about millennials. Mm-hmm. The topic of conversation today. And I love it. It's funny. You're what year did you graduate high school?
2006.
Good night. I feel old. Oh my God. Wow. Okay. Funny. But, it's fun for me. I taught high school, and I started teaching high school when I was 29, and all the students that I taught for 4.5 years are all so the first group graduated in 2000. So 2004, from 2000 to 2004 was that generation that I touched. And it's fun. Or actually, some of them probably graduated when you did. They just, probably came in right when. What year you were a freshman in? What year?
Freshman in college?
In high school.
Oh, high school? So I guess 2002.
Yeah. So I taught your age, so it's fun to watch the kids I taught in high school now become you, right?
Right.
Getting married, buying homes, having kids. So I have a connection, an affinity, a passion for your generation because I've been dealing with your generation, for a long time. So, whether it's when I was teaching or now in our business, I think you guys are special. It's just interesting watching how technology has transformed generational differences. It really, really has. We joke, Gen X jokes, we were the generation that had to go outside to amuse ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And the computer technology generation doesn't. It's really interesting to watch now with our children. They don't even know how to do that. And the world gets scarier. So your barriers are up even more. It's going to be really interesting to watch what happens with your kids.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great topic to talk about because, it's such an easy thing, especially as a parent, anybody that has kids nowadays are, it's so easy just to leverage the technology. Like, oh, you want to play? All right, well, here's an iPad that you're going to get addicted to. And, you're going to essentially, have this virtual life. And I have like a lot of thoughts about this. Have you ever heard of the simulation theory?
No.
I'll send you a video after this call, but simulation theory essentially suggests that kind of like what we're doing with creating these virtual environments like Facebook, and now there's actually a real estate brokerage that is completely virtual. They don't have any office space, but they have a virtual space where you have like your own avatar, and it's like a video game for the most part. And you're walking around the campus and you're going to classes and going to the help desk, and there's like actual people there that are there to chat with you, but you have to get to them through this like avatar world. And
well,
that, yeah, it's interesting, but, and actually I just rewatched the movie Tron last night, Tron Legacy. Have you ever seen that movie?
It's one of my all-time favorite movies.
Okay. So that movie blew my mind last night because I remember watching it when it first came out, and I didn't, I was like, oh, that's cool graphics and yeah, cool story. But like when I started thinking about the symbolism behind what we're talking about today, and like the addiction to technology, and how we are less of, using our bodies to communicate, and using the belly to belly communication that, your generation, that's all there was. And for millions of years, that's all there was. Now there's this new way to connect with people, which is through this virtual, technological world that we've built as a society, called the internet. And now we have identities on these platforms.
Yeah.
And these identities are, we can really make them to be whoever we want. And that movie Tron last night was kind of like speaking to that, where, they got plugged into, they ended up in this world somehow, and there's they're surrounded by all these different programs that were written for this world, but humans got stuck in this world, and it's like the fight against, I guess, good and evil, or fight against ego versus our true selves. So I thought there was a lot of symbolism there with what's going on in our reality now. And simulation theory suggests that, maybe what we're experiencing right now is a much more sophisticated and higher level simulation than than like what we are creating for, for our virtual experiences. This is just, the virtual experiences that we're creating are essentially just the capacity of which we've developed that technology. But what if, our consciousness came into this physical reality that same sort of way?
Wow.
And so, I mean, that's like, because we're connected to each other in like such an amazing way, and we're connected to our creator in a way that we can tap into, but we could also get lost in this world.
Right.
And so like Tron kind of like spoke to that a little bit, and simulation theory is, essentially that, where we've gotten away from where our consciousness really comes from and where we really come from. And we're just plugged into this meat vehicle that, allows us to live this, this life and have these different experiences and acquire these skills and acquire these coins and, and be able to do things in the ecosystem. So, I mean, that's, we can unpack that a lot. So I don't necessarily want to go there, but
right. I love that. It is, I mean, that's something that I'm so passionate about in regards to this. Would you call it a meat vehicle? Right.
Yeah.
That, it's really not the real reality. It's just true. I mean, think about it. We're only existing for what? An average of 85 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you just can't look at our consciousness as that's how finite it is.
Yeah.
We're just having this experience, but what experience is even bigger than that? And I think that's the main difference between our generations is I think the older you get, the more you tap into that. Did we talk last time about my conversation with my 80-something-year-old aunt?
No, I don't think so.
So we were at a family function. Here's my, my aunt who, like it's interesting to watch your parents and your aunts and uncles age. And as you get older, like I'm going to be 49 in 4 months, and you just get very present to, wow, time does this. And so I asked her, I think the older you get, Dean, the more you grasp the wisdom that the elderly bring. Somebody said, I forget what country they're from, but they said, in our country, the elderly are revered. They're revered for their wisdom. They're always put up as the older they get, the more importance and their importance gets. And in America, it's the opposite. And I thought that was really profound. So here, I'm sitting with my wife and I are sitting with my aunt, and I said, what have you learned? What lesson would you say was the biggest one? And her response was learning how to tolerate people more. And that stuck with me. Like, here's somebody with 80-something years of life experience, and that was the lesson. Learning how to tolerate people more. And I think, we think all these things are important, and then the older you get, you realize that they're not. It's the human experience that's important. It's the connections, the relationships that are most important. And we pack all these things when we're in our late 20s, 30s into this is what's important. And you realize that, my gosh, and it's scarier, right, for your generation and younger, because all the things that we think are important have been programmed into us to be important by somebody else. And as you get older, you realize that, oh my gosh, none of that really is. And what am I doing with my life? Which led to, what am I square pegging? And why am I square pegging it if it's not important?
Yeah. What do you think about the role of, because we used the word identity crisis on our last episode. And what do you think about like the identities that we hold, and as generations get older and older, and or as more generations kind of come into the human experience, I just feel like identity is so important for the human experience. Like, we anchor into the identity in which we believe is right, and that, and whatever identity we believe is for us and however we view our identity, that's ultimately kind of what happens. We live in line with that identity. And so, like, I just had a thought about, millennials, where we might have multiple identities, especially, like, you see it on Facebook, where people are putting their best foot forward and they're putting all the great things that are happening in their world and kind of one-upping each other. It feels like almost like a pissing contest, where it's like, oh, look how great my family is, or look how big my house is, or look what kind of car I'm driving nowadays. And we have these virtual identities that we work really hard to protect. And it's almost like sucking out the power and the energy that we give to actually fueling this identity, the identity of the human experience of what's most important and what's most real. So if I'm working so hard to just protect my virtual identity and not be vulnerable, which was another theme, I think, of our brief millennial conversation last time we spoke, that if our energy is getting sucked away from that, like, we're not truly owning ourselves. We're not owning our true identity. We're just we're running away from that identity, and we're, creating an identity somewhere else just so we can get that endorphin rush, or that sense of significance, or, like, connection with people that we, normally maybe we, wouldn't be able to have a connection with, because we're not coming from, we're coming from a, like a more ego place. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's funny that you talk about that. So, identity crisis, or what are we, I think if you were to boil what you're talking about down, like, what are we doing and what are we here for? Right? Am I on the right track there?
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Well, and social media and this, what you're talking about, the virtual world, really kind of robs us of this. But, it's just reading in the Bible, right, that you're supposed to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, right? And then you're supposed to love others the way you love God, basically, right? That's you're supposed to love God with everything you got, and then to treat others like, and love others the way you want to be loved, right? And so that doesn't happen. And think about how simple that is, right? It's just such a simple thing. And we spend, I think, as a society now, spending more time consuming and taking in. And even in the virtual world, think about it, we're projecting out with a mindset of what I really want to take in. So if I pick up my phone and I start posting, I'm posting, hey, like last night, right? So here's a great example. We got this Instant Pot, right? Which is the glorified pressure cooker, but it's really cool. So we get it as a gift. I've been wanting one of these for a while. And so I'm excited by it, and I'm going to make soup. So I post that I'm making soup, right? And then I show the finished product. And that stupid thing, right, generated all kinds of likes and this and that, right? So, something so non-important. But here's the point. I put that out there because I desired a response to come back to me. So when we post, it's a selfish act, right? We're really doing it to get a response to come back to us, right? And that's what happens in the virtual social world. Have we ever discussed in our time getting to know each other what I call the flow of the universe? We ever talk about that?
No, I don't think so.
So the flow of the universe is really simply this, that you can see me, but for those that are listening, here's a cup, right? And so this is my cup. Let's say that this cup is me. And so what I desire is that an outside source has to fill up my cup. So eventually this cup is going to get to a point where you can't put anything in here anymore. Make sense? Right? Mm-hmm. I'm full. Well, the only way for me to empty this is, I believe the flow of the universe is this, that you have a cup and I'm going to pour me into you. So now I'm empty and somebody's got to come along and pour back into me. And I really think that that's the flow of the universe, that we're supposed to get full, right? So this relationship that you and I have, we're each actually filling each other up. What we're supposed to do is then to take this and go pour it into somebody else, right? Being empty, so that somebody at a higher level than us can pour back into us, right? The Bible says you can't pour old wine into new wineskins. You can't pour old thoughts into, or you can't have, a new goal, great time of the year. I'm going to do this, this, this. Well, you can't have the same thoughts. Those thoughts have to come from a higher source. They have to come from somebody who's been along farther down the road, more experience, wisdom to pour that into you so that you can take that in and then go pour it out into somebody else. And if we keep doing that, it's no longer about me. What really comes to me is, okay, I need to get filled so that I can pour out into somebody else. I think what's happening with in our society, and as generations continue, is it's all about who's pouring into me, pouring into me, pouring into me, pouring into me, pouring, and we're taking, and people are more miserable because there's no giving. Right? It's just sitting inside. It's just sitting inside, and we're accumulating, but we're not putting out there. And social media isn't an answer because we're putting out to really just get back. It's not just let me pour this out into someone, just for the sake of pouring it out. And I don't think you can do that virtually because there's no face-to-face connection. You can't see somebody's response, the gratitude, the tears, the joy, the hugs, you know what I mean? That's the physical experience that makes that connection. Oh my gosh, I really empowered and enriched this person. That's not happening virtually.
Yeah. So what would it look like if social media was just about like, hey, I don't care if I get a response, or I don't care if I get any sort of significance from this post or from this just nugget that I want to put out into the world. I'm doing it with the soul. I even if I don't get a notification that anybody watched it, but I'm just putting it out there because I'm pouring it forward, so to speak.
Right. I think it would be amazing. And here's the funny thing. I don't know if are you familiar with Simon Sinek?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So if you watch his whole thing on millennials, he talks about how it's a dopamine hit when you get a like. So we're addicted, right? So if you put it out there on social media, I don't think you can avoid the addiction, right? But what if somebody called you, right? What if I put out there, this whatever, or you put it out and I called you up and I said, hey man, the message that you delivered today really touched my soul. And we had a conversation where you heard my voice and the inflection and the tone, and right, or we were face to face and I hugged you because of the impact that you made. I think we're losing the kinetic response that ties in all those things. So if you just do it on social media, the dopamine aspect, the addiction craves the response.
Couple things pop up for me. That's super interesting to think about because our last conversation when we talked about millennials, I think we used the word like closed off, where millennials are getting more closed off in their human experience because, that's why they only like to text. That's why they only like to, be, communicate in front of a computer versus an actual human. So it's just like like if, I believe in we're like just basically salt batteries. So we've got energy flowing through us constantly, and we can receive energy and we can put out energy, and energy that we can't even really see with our five senses, but we just know is there through just our, being in our human experience and in our consciousness. And this might come full circle with the whole identity crisis, where there's so much energy being put into creating this virtual identity and less energy into creating the human experience identity. And that energy flow, back to your point about the flow of, the universe, that energy flow is going into a place that's artificial, and it's not really part of the human experience.
That's right. It's not reality.
So that closed offedness, which I don't even know if it's a word, but
It is now.
I'm liking it. So it's going to be an Urban Dictionary tomorrow.
There you go. Right.
But the closed offedness, that might be a byproduct of, what the energy that is fueling the identity. Which identity is your energy fueling? Like that's a really powerful question.
Right.
When we take a look at where our time is best spent and our focus is spent, and our energy is just in general, our energy is spent. When we look at all those places, is it, like a great question just to kind of, step back and ask ourselves is like, which identity am I fueling right now? Am I fueling the identity of, like it's not what it seems. Everything, it's light and fluffy, no depth to it. Or is it the identity of like, hey, this is what I'm embodying right now in my own human experience. This is what's real for me right now. And this is me being vulnerable and exploring what's real for me right now.
Yeah.
And that I think might be the epicenter of the challenges that millennials have. Is I have these opportunities to express myself, and I can really be whoever I want on social media or on technology or in these virtual platforms and worlds. And I want to put more energy into those because I'm not happy with myself. I'm running away from, putting energy into, exploring the true identity of who I am.
Right.
And that's a really interesting thought to me.
Well, and now go back to, our podcast is, Man Up already. And one of the things that I found when I researched my book was that the National Institute on Drug Abuse says men are more likely than women to use almost all types of illicit drugs, relating in more emergency room visits and deaths from overdose than women. And 86% of gun deaths result from men.
Wow.
Right? So when you look at statistically what's happening, are we happier as people? And the answer is no, because we're not working on the things that enable us to be human beings. We weren't created, right? Go back to your whole Tron thing, right? We weren't created to live in a simulation. This is the real world. And human beings have real emotional needs that constantly are being watered down and then passed over for the virtual world. I'll give you a great example. This just happened last night. And I think the thing I love about our dialogue is, one, it's so transparent and authentic, that you and I are not saying, hey, we're perfect. We're saying these are things that we work on daily. We're just talking about them, right? So here's a great example. Yesterday, we finished dinner. My son's sitting there playing on his Xbox, and I'm watching it, and I have my phone, and I thought of this couple that had called to wish me a Merry Christmas. I texted him because it wasn't convenient for me to call back where I was at Christmas, realized that I didn't hear from him, and so I texted again. There's a running theme here. From the safety, comfort, and non-presentness, another word that'll be in the Urban Dictionary.
I like that one.
Of my couch, right? I didn't have to be present with him. Here's the crazy thing. I'm texting him, and it is proven that you cannot multitask. What we call multitasking is really not being focused, because your brain can only process one conscious thing at a time. It processes subconsciously all the time. But if I'm talking to Dean and then I switch my attention to my computer screen, I'm not fully present on you.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am sitting on my couch. My wife is sitting at the dining room table right off to my right. My son is playing his video game off to the left. I'm in the middle of the two of them texting someone. I'm not present with my son. I'm not present with my wife. And I'm certainly not present through my text. Does that make sense? So
Totally.
I'm really actually
where
not
are you?
present. I'm not present at all. I'm nowhere. I'm not getting fulfilled in any so I shoot the text to him and instantly my phone rings and he goes, "Why would I text you when I can talk to you?" And the crazy thing, Dean, is I got instantly uncomfortable. Why? Because it was inconvenient. And we've now turned social experiences in reality as an inconvenience to the so-called convenience of not being present.
Congratulations on the baby.
Oh, thank you, buddy.
That's awesome.
I saw the Facebook video.
Oh, thanks, man.
Right? And so see, here you go, right? That's not convenient, but that is actually reality.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
And part of me was like, oh man, like I want to receive that. And, I know that there's like some pressure here because we're recording a call and
so what though? That's reality, right?
Eventually there's going to be, somebody that watches this. And so back in my mind's like, oh, I want to make sure that they're engaged. And so that they're, absorbing the content, not getting distracted because I'm getting distracted and, me being presence. Wow.
Right.
That is everything.
Right. Where are we? And that's the thing, right? When we're in the social media world, we're actually not present anywhere, right? I mean, think about it. We're walking around with our phones, texting and posting, really texting, but we're not present in our current reality. But I'm not fully present in the reality of who I'm talking to. You ever text somebody and it takes a while for them to respond? Like we've gotten used to some really wacky conversations. Can you imagine you and I are doing this dialogue? We see each other through the camera and I say something to you and 5 minutes goes by with no response. Like in our presence, you would just not accept that from somebody. But we've gotten used to a texting world where it takes like 5 minutes and then you respond, or sometimes an hour. So how could you possibly be present?
Wow.
It's funny. It's just an interesting thing that we've accepted that is eroding the human experience, which is what I think what leads to all the things that we just talked about. More pornography use, more gun violence, more drug. I mean, people are not happy because we're removing the things that are part of being human.
Love it. Like closed offness,
non-presentness.
The two go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And so like, let's just like, get one last thread here, on, around this conversation of, millennials, but specifically men. Like, men are the, like we could see by the statistics that you just shared that men clearly on average are not fulfilled, or at least less fulfilled than women.
Yep.
And so there's a fundamental difference in the way that men show up and our ability to be present and be fulfilled, and not just be fulfilled, but also be fulfilling. Let's talk about, men in that journey, because a statistic that I read not too long ago, I can't remember the exact statistic, but it was like crazy high. It was like 90 something % of men over the age of 17 cannot identify a best friend.
Wow. That's nuts.
Women, on the other hand, are so receiving of their friends and their family, and they are so present to those types of relationships, where men, we don't even want to go there because we're not present. We're somewhere else. We're running away from the present.
Well, oh my gosh, we could unpack this one. We could unpack this deep, real deep, because we're touching on some issues. Can I respond to this? Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do like a 10,000 foot response, and then we'll save the deeper dive in for the next conversation.
Okay. So the bottom line is this, and here's where the technology is removing this. Okay. And I'm not an outdoors guy. My son wants to be, but it's just kind of an example, and I'll circle back to that at some point, but I'll say this. Before technology, so the Gen X generation, my generation, but in the 80s, you didn't have the technology that you have today, right? So it was hard enough being a young man, and I talk about it in the book, that God creates men to lead. He creates men to have an enemy, a battle to fight, right? There's all these things that men are created to do. It's in our spirit. And we need another man to foster that. Masculinity cannot come from femininity. Masculinity must come from masculinity. And because of the rise of single moms and all that stuff, we have major issues when it comes to where men are receiving masculinity. And unfortunately for your generation and younger now, they're not receiving it at all. Right? So for my generation, you had to go someplace. You couldn't virtually get it. You had to physically get it. Okay? It's 10 times worse today because men are seeking it virtually and they're still not getting it. So when you talk about the best friends and the relationships and all that, it's not coming from anywhere, but now we've equipped a generation to not even know how to go get it. Because we're losing the social skills of connecting to a man and befriending a man and going through life's journey. You know, it's why I believe in the organization Band of Brothers, right? Where men get together and you spend 4 days in the middle of nowhere to connect back to God and who you were and who you were created to be, and to build that brotherhood and that's why in here in our office in South Florida, I want to do more events that connect men with men, because and now just through this conversation, I get how much more important it is that I do that in 2019 than the way I did it in 2018. But that's the issue, Dean. It's from a 10,000, 30,000 foot view. It was hard enough when you didn't have the social world. It's even harder today because masculinity must come from another man, and your generation and younger doesn't even know how to connect, or we're losing that connection. Which then men seek it from women, which is the rise of pornography. Because if we lose social skills, if we lose the ability to connect, to walk up to a woman, right, to just do all the things. I mean, Ethan, my son, is texting and socially trying to, say the right things. And I'm like, dude, just call her. No, we don't do that. Freaking call her. Have a conversation or at least video chat so that you're having, a real conversation. Because as long as we lose that, we are literally losing what God created men to be.
Wow. That's, I love what you said about, masculine energy has to come from masculine energy, and Newton's law of the universe is energy is neither created nor destroyed. It's just transferred. And so, if we have these two energies, the masculine and the feminine energy, we can only rely on the feminine energy to give us the feminine energy. But if we need masculine energy, we need to, like men, that's a calling for men to show up in their masculine energy so that they can pour that forward, going back to our metaphor, so that it continues. And our legacy as men in society is eroding because, it seems so clear now, just the way that you put it in, the frame that you put it in was beautiful, because our legacy as men on this planet, as of right now in this society, the history books, if there was a history book that was written in this context, they would say that the legacy of men has been eroded by the erosion of that masculine energy and that connectedness to the masculine energy.
You got it. And it's funny too, just a sidebar, like a friend of mine put a posting up on Facebook about strong women, right? And why very strong women are single. And, the posting was, what intimidates men from a strong woman? And so they listed all the qualities, and my response back was, none of those things intimidate a strong man. If anything, a strong man seeks that from a woman so that they complement each other and can go fight the battle that is what God created them to. You know what I mean? Like, And it's just
It's
so
like
funny.
they're seeking more. They're yearning for that masculine energy.
Yeah, and but now think about that, right? So we have more strong women in our society than I think ever, which is freaking awesome. But men are so not showing up that we're now putting things out there that say this is why men are intimidated by that. Instead of, will we please just, and we're on a podcast, so we can say whatever we want. Will you just man the fuck up? Like, will you please just tap into who you were freaking created to be? Because, you know, we just went and saw Aquaman yesterday, right? And so if you haven't seen that movie, here's Aquaman, right, partnered up with the strong woman, and together they're fighting the battle. And then you got Band of Brothers. I mean, there's all kinds of things in there, whether you like the movie or not. My wife didn't like the movie because of the poor acting. But from a story standpoint, he didn't choose some weak woman to fight by his side. He chose, right, this fierce warrior to fight by his side. And that, like, those themes we look at as entertainment, but those themes are real. And we as men have to learn how to man back up. And it's not on social media. It's in the real freaking world.
Awesome, man. Well, that's a great way to end this this conversation, dude.
Yeah, man.
We'll pick it up on the next one.
Love it.